Hello everyone and welcome to video tutorial 3. From the last video tutorial you should be experts in interdependence and you should now be able to pause the video and answer the starter activity. The starter activity says that in the grassland food web above the slugs became extinct because all of their habitat was destroyed. Then it tells us to use the words increase, decrease or stay the same to describe the effect this has on the population of insects. So the answer to this question would be, if we remove the slugs, it would be that the insects would increase, and that's because there would be less competition for the grass with the slugs away. If you got the answer correct, well done. If you struggled, then you should go back and watch video tutorial 2 on interdependence again. So today we're going to look at ecosystems. So if you want the worksheets, you'll need to pause the video and you'll need to go to 1 Life on Earth, 1 Interdependence, 2 worksheets and 3 ecosystems. Then the PowerPoint is found in PowerPoint. Today we are learning about ecosystems. Our learning intention is to learn about ecosystems and how to use the science terms to describe the different components of the ecosystem. The reason that we are looking at this today is because we share our world with so many other species in a delicate balance, and we need to consider our actions on the planet. So to be successful in this video tutorial, you will be able to give 4 examples of an ecosystem. You will be able to state the meaning of the terms ecosystem, habitat, population, biodiversity and community, and you will be able to describe the importance of maintaining biodiversity and to be able to describe why plants and animals are interdependent. We stated what an ecosystem was in the last video tutorial, so pause the video and see if you can write down its correct definition. So the answer is that ecosystems include all of the living things, their environment and the factors that affect their lives. Then you're going to watch this video below which describes ecosystems in more detail, so make sure you give it a watch. We have said that the ecosystem is made up of 2 parts, so can you pause the video and write down the 2 parts of an ecosystem? So the first part of an ecosystem is the non-living things. Well done if you got that correct, which would be the habitat. Now the habitat is defined as the place where organisms live, and then the second part of the ecosystem is all of the living things, so the community, which includes all of the different populations. So a population is all of the numbers of one species. If you were in class, you would make a note on this, so you can pause the video and learn it and write down all of the definitions. Ecosystems vary in size. They can be small like a puddle, they can be larger like a tree or a house, or they can be even larger like a country or a biome, or they can be even larger than that, as some consider the Earth to be one big ecosystem. So now we're going to look at 4 ecosystems in more detail. The first picture shows an ecosystem. If you want to, you can pause the video and try to write down what the ecosystem is, what the community is, and so on before I go over the answers. So the answers are that this ecosystem is a woodland ecosystem, and the community would be all of the living things that exist in this ecosystem. So that would be the squirrel, the large owl, the small birds, the ladybirds, the greenflies, the unicellular algae, the greenfly, the woodlouse, the toadstools, the earthworm, the moss and the wood sorrel. The habitats are the place where the organisms above live. So for example, they might live in branches, leaves, tree trunks, roots, soil and leaf litter. The population would be all of the numbers of one species. So for example, this could be the number of ladybirds, it could be the number of squirrels and so forth. And the biodiversity is a variety of different species. So that would be all of the numbers of the different species. So in this ecosystem, there is more than 12 different species. The second picture shows a different ecosystem. So if you want to, you can pause the video and try to write down what ecosystem, community, habitat, and so forth is before I go over the answers. So this is a soil ecosystem. So the community in the soil ecosystem would be all of the living things. So that would consist of the springtail, the woodlouse, the plant stem, the toadstool, the bacteria, the centipede, the spider, the millipede, the thrips, the beetle, the mite, the leather jacket, the plant roots, the earthworm, the wireworm, and the nematode worm. The habitats would be all of the places where these organisms live. So for example, the dead leaf litter, the soil, burrows, rocks, and roots. The population would be all of the numbers of one species, so for example, the number of millipedes. And biodiversity would be the variety of different species in the soil ecosystem. So there is more than 18 different species in this soil ecosystem. Well done if you got that correct. The third picture shows a different ecosystem. If you want to, you can pause the video and try to write down what the ecosystem is, what the community is, what the habitats are, and so on, before I go over the answers. So the answers are that this is a pond ecosystem. The community is all of the living things, so this would include the adult mayfly, pond skater, frogbit, algae, mayfly nymph, dragonfly nymph, reed, Canadian pondweed, water spider, water boatman, pond shrimp, stickleback, hornwort, water fleas, bloodworm, rat-tailed maggot, water louse, frog tadpole, leech, great water beetle, and caddisfly larvae. The habitat is the places that these organisms live. So for example, this would be water, reeds, Canadian pondweed, and sediment. An example of the population, so this would be the number of one species. So for example, that would be the number of pond skaters or the number of mayfly nymphs and so forth. And the biodiversity is a variety of different species. So in this case, in this pond, there would be more than 21 different species. So the biodiversity would be more than 21 different species. The fourth picture shows a different ecosystem again. So if you want to, you can pause the video and try to write down all of the different components of the ecosystem before I go over the answer. So this is a grassland ecosystem. The community would be all of the living things that live within it, so that would include grass, trees, vultures, elephants, zebras, termites, hyenas, cheetah, bacteria, dung beetles, and fungi. The habitats are the places where these organisms would live, so this includes trees, roots, leaves, branches, grass, nests, and soil. And the example of a population would be all of the numbers of one species. So for example, the number of elephants. And the biodiversity is a variety of different species. So in this case, in the grassland, the biodiversity would have more than 11 different species. So well done if you managed to get all of the components of these ecosystems correct. Some of you might be surprised to learn that you are an ecosystem. Many bacteria, fungi, and viruses live on you. You have approximately 25 different species in your mouth, 500 to 1,000 species in your intestine, over 6,000 species in your respiratory system, 1,000 species on your skin, and 60 species in your urinary system. So now we have went over all of the key terms in detail, you can now try to complete Activity 1. You can find Activity 1 in the 1 Interdependence, 2 worksheets, and 3 ecosystems. This worksheet firstly asks you to fill out the missing words and examples, so pause the video and try to fill out the table. Leave the other questions at the bottom for now, and then we will go back to them. The answers are that all of the living and non-living parts of one area would be the ecosystem, and an example of the ecosystem would be the beach. The place where an organism lives would be the habitat, and an example of that would be burrows and nests. All plants and animals in one area would be the community, and an example of that would be all of the trees, the plants, birds, insects, mammals in a forest. And the number of one species would be your population, and an example of that would be the number of ladybirds. And the number of different species in an ecosystem would be biodiversity. And an example of this would be in the rainforest, the biodiversity would be high. So well done if you got all of them answers correct. For the next part of the worksheet, it is important that we go over interdependence again. So we know that plants and animals will only survive if there is enough available food, water, shelter, and light, etc. We also know that plants and animals depend on each other for survival. What we might not know is that plants and animals also rely on microorganisms, and they rely on microorganisms to decompose and return nutrients to the soil. So now with that knowledge, you can pause the video and you can try to use the information to try to answer the other questions on the worksheet. The answers to the rest of the worksheet are: the animals and microorganisms depend on plants for food. Plants and animals depend on microorganisms for nutrients. Animals depend on plants for food and shelter. And plants depend on animals for pollination. So well done if you got all of them answers correct. So we've already said that our ecosystem is made up of two parts. So pause the video and write down what two parts the ecosystem is made up of. So the first part is the non-living things, which is the habitat. And another word and a way of describing that is abiotic factors. And we need to know that our abiotic factors are our non-living things. And the second part of the ecosystem would be our community, and that is all of our living things. Now, another way of describing living things would be biotic factors. So we're going to go into the two terms, abiotic factors and biotic factors, in a little more detail. And a way that you can remember the difference between abiotic factors and biotic factors is biotic starts with bio, and bio is in the word biology, and biology is the study of living things. Let's look at biotic factors in more detail. So biotic factor is something which is living and affects the environment. So this could be how plants, animals, and microorganisms interact with each other. So what are these biotic factors, and how do these organisms interact with each other? Well, organisms may compete with each other for limited resources, for example, food, shelter, and mates. So competition would be one of your biotic factors. Organisms may eat each other or may be eaten by each other, which leads to predation, and that would be another biotic factor. Organisms might eat grass, which would lead to grazing, which would be another biotic factor. And finally, our microorganisms may cause diseases in other organisms, which may lead to viruses such as myxomatosis in rabbits, which again would be another biotic factor. So competition, predation, grazing, and diseases are all biotic factors. Now let's look at abiotic factors in more detail. An abiotic factor is something which is non-living and affects the environment. So this could be temperature, light intensity, pH, gases such as oxygen, soil, rocks, and water. So all of these factors influence what living things can grow and live there. We should now know that our biotic factors are living things that affect the environment, and our abiotic factor are non-living things that affect the environment. So you can watch this video which will talk you through abiotic and biotic factors in more detail. We have now come to the end of the lesson. You can pause the video and try to answer the success criteria. The answers to the success criteria are: you should be able to give 4 examples of ecosystems, so that could include a woodland ecosystem, a soil ecosystem, a grassland ecosystem, and a tree ecosystem. You should be able to state that an ecosystem is how the living and non-living things interact together in an area. A habitat is the place where an organism lives. The population is the number of one species. Biodiversity is the variety of all the different species in an ecosystem. And community is all of the living things. You should be able to describe that plants and animals depend on each other for pollination, food, and shelter. So well done if you got all of that correct. If you didn't, then you will need to watch video tutorial 3 again. You can now test your knowledge by completing assignment 3. That is the end of the video tutorial. Woohoo! Thank you for listening.